So I'm a board certified psychiatrist, and it's my mission to help psych NPs practice psychiatry with confidence. And so in this video, we're going to be covering how modern antidepressants were built beyond the SSRIs, looking at the serotonergic medications like the SNRIs and the serotonin modulators. And so if you understand how they were built and why they were built, then you'll be able to understand how to utilize them in clinical practice. So in the 90s, was when we had our SSRI revolution, where a bunch of new SSRIs came on the market and they worked decently, but they had a lot of problems associated with them too. Side effects, cognitive problems, sexual problems, not really helping pain. And so there was a void there. And so Big Pharma saw this void and attempted to fill it. And so these next medications that we're going to cover are how they sequentially attempted to fill in the void that SSRIs had. Starting off in 1993, this is when we had the release of Venlafaxine or Effexor. So Venlafaxine came out in 93, and the benefit of Venlafaxine was that it had norepinephrine activity. So not just serotonin, but norepinephrine. And the norepinephrine activity was at the higher doses. So theoretically, this should help with low energy, should help with pain. It should help with somatic, like physical type of anxiety. And in fact, they did find that its stimulating nature was helpful for increasing the response for people in both treatment-resistant depression and severe depression. The problem that we ran into was that it had a lot of strong side effects. It had unpredictable dosing because the norepinephrine kicks in at higher doses, serotonin at lower doses, but it's hard to predict how much serotonin and how much norepinephrine each patient's getting. The dosing can be unpredictable, especially between patients, and the withdrawal was really bad. So those are some of the problems that were associated with venlafaxine. And the pain efficacy that it had been billed for was questionable. So fast forward into 2004, and Duloxetine or Cymbalta gets released. And so Duloxetine had a much more promising aspect on pain treatment. So they found that it was helpful for pain. So this opened up a whole new avenue for these antidepressants, fibromyalgia, diabetes pain, etc. It also has balanced release of serotonin and norepinephrine. And because it's got that balanced release, it made the dosing more predictable for patients. And patients were now getting an equal amount of the neurotransmitters rather than guessing as to how much of which they're getting. So it made the effects on patients more consistent. But the problem that we ran into with Duloxetine was it didn't have the strong efficacy that venlafaxine did. And in clinical practice, I consider Duloxetine as weaker, quote unquote, than venlafaxine. And the dosing is still somewhat unstable because it's got those two neurotransmitters, the serotonin and norepinephrine. And it's got some CYP inhibition as well, so it was affecting other medications. So fast forward now, right? Now we have this medication, so we have the problems here where unpredictable dosing affecting other medications. So now comes along Desvenlafaxine or Pristiq. And so you may have seen this in GeneSight tests where it's on the green, and it's always on the green. And the reason is because desvenlafaxine is the broken down form of venlafaxine. And so because it's been broken down, it avoids a lot of those CYP interactions that venlafaxine can have. It avoids, like, the dosing is more stable too because the serotonin and the norepinephrine are more balanced with this. That's nice as well. And the dosing is relatively simple with Pristiq too. So those are the advantages that Pristiq came in with. Downsides of desvenlafaxine, though, were that it didn't really address any of the side effect issues with it. So there's still blunting, there's still sexual side effects, there's still slow onset of action, and withdrawal anecdotally may not be as bad for desvenlafaxine, but it is still present. So this leads us to 2011, just a couple years later, where now Vilazodone gets released. And so Vilazodone is a serotonin modulator. So being a serotonin modulator, it has serotonergic properties, but it fine tunes the response of serotonin. And so Vilazodone, it's got the SSRI activity, but it also has the receptor of 5-HT1A. And so having the 5-HT1A receptor, it's a presynaptic receptor. And normally what happens is that this receptor gets stimulated with the serotonin release. And in fact, it inhibits the downstream release of serotonin. And so because it inhibits the downstream release of serotonin, that receptor eventually has to get desensitized before the synapse can be fully flooded with serotonin. And so that's why the SSRIs take 4 to 6 weeks to start kicking in, is because their progress in releasing serotonin gets inhibited, pulled back until the 5-HT1A receptor presynaptically says, okay, enough is enough, right? So this is where the 5-HT1A is, and then releasing 5-HT into the serotonin. But with Vilazodone, because it blocks, or it'll bind to the 5-HT1A receptor, it's going to desensitize it faster. And so because it desensitizes it faster, it won't inhibit as much. And so the serotonin will reach its peak capacity faster. And so Vilazodone is theoretically supposed to have a faster onset of action compared to the other SSRIs. So that is a big benefit there. The secondary benefit is that because of the 5-HT1A property, the second benefit is that because the 5-HT1A helps modulate the serotonin release, so it doesn't flood the system as well. That's a secondary thing it has. You tend to get less dopamine suppression. And because you have less dopamine suppression, the sexual side effects tend to be less too with Vilazodone. So that is a secondary benefit that Vilazodone has. So that's a big change. It's faster and less sexual side effects. So now we're addressing some of the problems in the earlier ones. Of course, it still has a lot of the serotonergic side effects of SSRIs, like nausea and GI effects, some blunting. Blunting is a big one. And this is where now in 2013/14, now we get Vortioxetine or Trintellix. And so Vortioxetine will hit the 5-HT1A receptor, but it's also going to hit 5-HT3 and 5-HT7. And 5-HT3, so this is a receptor that's found in the prefrontal cortex. And basically, when that receptor is stimulated, it causes slowing down of the prefrontal cortex. Think about like you have a big turkey dinner, it's flooded with serotonin, and now you're just like relaxed and digesting. Your frontal cortex isn't working as strong. So it'll block that. So by blocking that, you have more glutamate activity. You don't have the inhibition, so you're stimulating the prefrontal cortex. So if someone has cognitive decline, cognitive blocking, or just cognitive blunting, then Vortioxetine is a really good option for that. It also stimulates the 5-HT7 receptor in the cortex, in the limbic system, so a lot of the emotional system like the hippocampus, the thalamus, and also in the circadian system, so affecting sleep. So normally when that receptor is stimulated, it causes a blocking effect to 5-HT7, and that tends to cause stuckness and less of an emotional range. But by blocking that, now we can increase emotional diversity and less feeling stuck. So a lot of times patients will complain of emotional blunting. And so that 5-HT7 activity can make Vortioxetine a good option to target those. And it's got some of that 5-HT1A receptor antagonism from the previous Vilazodone. So it's going to have faster onset of action and less sexual side effects. So you can basically see how these antidepressants evolved, still using the serotonergic system to fine-tune their mechanisms and just try to get better and better with each iteration. Of course, none of them are perfect. They all have still side effects, especially the ones associated with serotoninism, like nausea and vomiting and diarrhea. But a lot of the out there side effects can be targeted with some of these effects, and they can have their unique benefits as well too. So then just to summarize, Venlafaxine, good for treatment-resistant and severe because of the norepinephrine activity. For fatigue, it can be really helpful as well. Duloxetine, if you're trying to target pain alongside of it, really helpful. For Vilazodone, if you have sexual side effects, you want quicker action, really helpful. And if you have cognitive blunting or emotional blunting, then Vortioxetine is the move to go. I hope this helps you understand some of the non-SSRI serotonergic medications and how to use them in practice and how they evolved historically. If you want to know details about how to use these medications in actual clinical practice with real life patient examples and discuss your cases with me, best place to do that is in our PMHNP Academy. So I'd advise you to check that out. Otherwise, check out the video linked at the end of this one, and I'll see you there.